Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the running back position we're going to be looking at throughout the entirety of this week. Last week looked at the wide receiver position, so you can check out my rankings there. Actually, that's 2 weeks ago. Last week we went through the tight end position. In either case, you can check out my ranking videos here on YouTube, as well as my sleeper videos and my bust videos, which running back, sleeper, bust videos will be coming out later this week, Wednesday and Friday. And you can always see all of my rankings up on the website, www.theFFforge.com. There's a link down in the description as well, so check that on out. And without much further ado, we'll get right into this. Just a heads up, at the end of the video, there'll be a few channel announcements, mostly in terms of becoming a member and a listeners-only league that looking to see if there's enough demand for that we can get put together. So stay tuned for that. Fast forward to that at any point, whatever the case. Let's get on to these running backs, and I'm going to be going through and putting these in tiers, the specific ranking order. Once again, you can check out on the website, but the tiers are going to be as so. We've got S tier. Then we've got a group of guys who I don't really have any questions about. Then there's a group of guys with a question or two. Then there are my touchdown reliant question mark guys. Maybe kind of similar to a question or two, but maybe that's a little bit more of a concern. Maybe we're entering boom or bust type of territory, and right behind that we do have my weekly. So that's like a season long boom or bust type thing, depending on how well the touchdowns turn around for them, I believe. Whereas we come to the weekly boom or bust, and it's really like on a week in and week out basis, it's going to be hard to trust them, but there's going to be some good weeks. Then we've got the multiple questions. We have there's upside, so I think probably some of the backup, higher end backup running backs will probably make it into this group. And then the other guy, usually it's the other guy in the backfield, but still guys who I have my eyes on and might be willing to draft later on in the draft, as there are a limited number of sure things at the running back position. You have to start to take some shots at things later on in the draft if you carry enough running backs on your roster. So let's start this out. We're just going to go in no specific order. The order that we've got down here, starting off with James Conner, who I do have a few questions about, but nothing too serious. The main thing here is that it's not going to be James Conner's backfield alone, and I do have some concern that by the end of it all, I believe it is Trey Benson there that is joining him in Arizona, James Conner might not be the starter by the end of the season. It's going to bring us on to James Cook, somebody who I really don't have any questions on. I will speak more about him in the sleepers and busts video, but I'm feeling pretty confident about James Cook coming into this season. Not too concerned about the backup running back situation that they drafted there. All in all, just no real questions for me there. That's going to bring us on to Justice Hill, which I think you could probably guess here. It's going to be the other guy. There is some upside to him. I don't know how much, but I'm not willing to just throw it to the side with the other guy in this backfield, Keaton Mitchell. Is going to be missing some time early on in the season. So I do think that there's going to be a role for Justice Hill. We'll see how much that actually is, though, with somebody else looming in that backfield. That's going to bring us on to Kendre Miller, the other guy. A little bit more upside, interested in the upside here of Kendre Miller. He's probably closer to like the top half of these other guys, I would guess, just given my sentiment there about being interested in some of that upside potential for Kendre Miller. New Orleans backfield, by the way, backing up Alvin Kamara, who's starting to get up there in age. Saquon Barkley is going to be an S tier choice, of course. Now with the Eagles, how do you not get pretty excited about that? The floor, or the highest, I would say the floor might not be as lovely as it has been sometimes in New York, because they'll just be less reliant upon him, but still going to be a big piece of that offense, trying to keep attention off of Jalen Hurts, because that really hurt him a lot last year with the blitz and everything. So Saquon Barkley is going to play an important role for sure. So bring us on to Tony Pollard, who's got the weekly boom or bustness to him, going to be splitting some work with Tyjae Spears. That offense, to me, is not going to be consistently enough getting him and or Tyjae or whoever else into the touchdown, easy touchdown types of territory. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how much he'll be, consistently getting you good fantasy points, or a high enough amount that I don't have him ranked higher than I do. Travis Etienne is going to be in the no questions tier. Proved to me last year that he is pretty darn good, and I think he's left Jacksonville with not much of a choice but to really keep playing him. They seemingly were looking for a little more of a bruiser over the past few years in that backfield, but I think Travis Etienne has proved that you just give him the ball as many times as you can and things should work out just fine. Trey Benson is going to be the other guy, but like I said for James Conner, I do see the upside with Trey Benson to say that he's definitely somebody who should be drafted. No doubt in my mind about that. Tyjae Spears, the other guy, going to be splitting work with Tony Pollard to some extent. How much of an extent, I don't know. Was disappointing. Was really looking forward to having Tyjae Spears ranked somewhere up here, but it is not the case. But that does hurt Tony Pollard a little bit because they do perform a lot of the same types of duties. So interesting choice bringing Tony Pollard in there, I thought. Tyler Algier, the other guy. In the event of an injury to Bijan Robinson, he's proven himself quite solid, but I don't think he'll get as much work as he got last year in that system with that coaching staff. Bijan Robinson should be really getting it, be the workhorse this year on that offense. So Tyler Algier gets some work, but not enough to ever throw out there, even on a whim, I don't think, on a weekly basis. Tyrone Tracy Jr., I do think there's a chance here that he could upset Devin Singletary at some point in the season if he were to progress at a fast rate. Quite a few ifs, but what I do want to say about him is just the receiving upside for him is really high, and if he ends up carving out a little bit of a role there as a receiving back, those are more important for half PPR, full PPR especially, where he might be able to be a serviceable backup guy on your roster in case of emergency. Zach Charbonnet, another like Tyler Algier-esque, I think, situation here. I don't know about him on a week in and week out basis, but the moment that somebody gets injured, Kenneth Walker III, then we're looking at something that's very good that people would be spending a lot of money to get onto their to get onto their rosters. Javonte Williams is a guy who there's upside here on this tier. They did bring in Audric Estime in the draft, and I do have concerns about that and what this staff thinks of Javonte Williams and ultimately how much workload he'll get. I think some of his workload is going to get eaten into, and I do think that he'll be a little more boom or bust than we would like, in part because of that. And then on top of that, you just have this offense that we're not expecting a whole lot of great things from this year. I think it will be serviceable at best, really. There's upside. He's a playmaker. Maybe I should talk about the upside. He is a playmaker, and maybe he staves off Audric Estime and anybody else from really hurting him, and he gets a lot of the bulk of the work, and he's a really, maybe touchdown reliant kind of guy. That's going to bring us on to Zach Moss, who I have also in the There's Upside group. We saw last year when he was getting 20-something carries, he did very well. He quickly ceded that work to Jonathan Taylor when Jonathan Taylor returned. I really, really like the other running back there, Chase Brown, a lot, if you remember last year. So I don't think that there's like a guarantee that Zach Moss is in anything more than a 50-50-ish, 60-40 kind of split, in which case I don't know that I trust the skill set on top of maybe not so much receiving work, so that's not going to help for full PPR, half PPR. But the upside is going to be on Cincinnati Bengals offense there, so obviously worth drafting. Currently the starter, I believe there. Let's bring us on to Zamir White, a guy who I really, really like a lot, and I wish I didn't have a question or two, but I do have a question or two about Zamir White, and we'll cover that in the Sleepers or Bus video later this week. That's going to bring us on to DeAndre Swift, who I have a weekly boom or bust tag on. A lot of running backs there in Chicago. This offense should be good, but I don't know that it's going to be anything more than like average, bordering upon above average as the season goes along, as the rookie gets more comfortable. And, DeAndre Swift's just been a little bit boomer bust in his career. Touchdowns are important. And once again, the rookie quarterback, just a couple of questions here to keep me a little bit more hesitant on DeAndre Swift, given so many different things working against him having an incredibly successful year, but the potential is definitely there. Dameon Pierce is a running back who we're going to put into the other guy tier here. Yeah, he very clearly became the other guy. He's, if you don't know, in Houston, got basically overseeded by Devin Singletary last season. They have said some good things about Dameon Pierce, still having faith in him, but they also brought in the guy that Zach Moss is replacing, Joe Mixon. So, Joe Mixon's going to be the starter there. I don't think there's too much doubt about that. And to be honest, Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, I don't know that there's a whole lots of differences in the terms of the type of running back that they are anyways. So, Dameon Pierce, I think, might be kind of the RB3 in a sense that he's the backup to Joe Mixon, and their change of pace back is somebody else. So, bring us on to David Montgomery, who I've got a touchdown reliant question mark tag on here. I'm expecting fully Jahmyr Gibbs to take more work than he had last year. We saw that happen towards the later portion of last year, but I also am expecting him to continue to have this role that has been very highly productive over the last couple of years. Jamal Williams a couple of years ago, David Montgomery just last season for much of the season. The problem with that role, and then you reduce that role a little bit, is now we're looking at a little bit less of a floor and more touchdown reliance. The thing is for a couple of years in a row, there have been enough touchdowns for this spot to be highly valuable overall amongst running backs. That's going to bring us on to Devon Achane is Achane. It's the correct pronunciation. Weekly boomer bust guy here. We'll talk about him in my boom or bust, my sleepers or busts video. If you know anything about me and Devon Achane, I love him. I highly recommended drafting him last year. He was probably number 2 highest on my recommendations for late round running backs, or at least out of the rookie running backs to go out and get him. Yeah, he'll be in the Friday video, as you can see. That's going to bring us on to Derrick Henry, another guy who will be in that same video. We'll talk about it then, okay? I do have a question or two with Derrick Henry, and I don't know, just like Achane, the convincing can be had for me to get these guys higher because I don't want to be wrong on them, but I also I want to be honest with what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling. And the math behind that. So I'll bring it to Derrick Henry then. Devin Singletary is next up on my list. He's a guy who moved up more recently in the process for me, but I do still have him in the other guy tier here. He's going to be in either the boom or the sleepers or bust video later this week, so we'll talk about him then. But he is currently the starter there for the New York Giants. That's going to bring us on to Ezekiel Elliott, who's the other guy, much like Devin Singletary here. I hope I'm not underranking it too much. Zeke Elliott's going to be in Dallas, I assume, kind of like a starting running back type of role at that. I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's valueless. He did quite well last season. If he can get, that was mostly receiving work that held that up. I don't know that will quite repeat itself in this offense, but nonetheless, not something that you can completely ignore, that's for sure. Gus Edwards, another guy who's going to be in one of those videos later this week on Wednesday or Friday, so keep an eye out for that. I do have some concerns for Gus Edwards in terms of where I'm ranking him. But he might not be the other guy in his offense. That's going to bring us on to Jaylen Warren, who I actually moved. He is a guy who I have moved since originally making this list and this video up into the There's Upside group. This just comes down to the fact that I think that he is a better system match for the Arthur Smith zone blocking running system than is Najee Harris, who will also find himself in this tier because there's still upside with him as well. Isaac Guerendo, we're going to put him down here in the other guy group. Look, if Christian McCaffrey goes down with injury, I'm pretty sure it's Isaac Guerendo who's going to be taking over a spot, a very valuable spot in a good, potent offense that could definitely, turn out and be very, very valuable for any number of weeks this year in fantasy football. Isaiah Pacheco is a guy who I'm a little hesitant on. A question or two there for him with the workload and everything. I think this offense will be able to rely on the pass just a little bit more this year as they've brought in some reinforcements into that wide receiver room. Yeah, a question or two, not too much of a question. I think we pretty much know what we're getting with Isaiah Pacheco at this point. Is he maybe a little touchdown reliant? Maybe. J.K. Dobbins is going to be coming up next in this video, and he's there's upside with J.K. Dobbins, definite upside. You're taking a risk if you're drafting him. I do think that I'm willing to take that risk again. Question mark. We'll talk more about him in one of the later videos this week. That's going to bring us on to Jahmyr Gibbs, he's S-tier talent. I preferred him. I did not have him ranked higher than Bijan Robinson, but I thought there was a high enough chance that he might be the better running back out of the two, 5 years down the road, whatever, career-wise in the NFL. Really, really big fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. And I thought it was a 1A, 1B-ish type of situation with a slightly clear 1A, though, for the running backs last year. So, I'm a big fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. To bring us on to Ken Walker, touchdown reliant, question mark. Still don't know exactly what to expect with this offense. Serviceable. Maybe it goes through the running back. But I do think that Ken Walker is going to get the bulk, of the carries. I don't know how often his offense is going to give him the layup touchdowns that are needed to be a little bit higher up / just based on past production and everything too on top of that last year. So still just where he ends up getting ranked. This is still going to be top 24. Khalil Herbert is going to be, I assume, the other guy in the event of an injury to DeAndre Swift. Definite workload there. Are they going to use him more? Could this be a fairly good split situation where he's going to have a floor? It's possible. That's to bring us on to Kyren Williams, who I have up in the question or two tier, and there's some pretty strong questions with Blake Corum coming in. Similar type running back profiles. Given how well Kyren Williams played last year, I still think it's him. I think that they run him, I think most likely scenario is that they run him down as much as possible, wear him out, whatever, use him, and then toss him to the side, let some other team pick him up when his contract ends, which this might be the last year of his contract, or he's got 2 years, but and then they've got Blake Corum waiting in the shadows for, of course, an event of injury or for next year or 2 years down the road, whatever the case. So I'm not too concerned currently, but gonna definitely listen to the news on that one. Marshawn Lloyd is someone who I'm pretty optimistic about. He's gonna get a decent amount of receiving work, or there's an opportunity for him to get a pretty decent amount of receiving work in the Green Bay offense, and he's a really, really good system fit for them as well. So I think I could see him being standalone a valuable-ish asset to have on your fantasy rosters, and especially in the event of an injury, of course, too, all the more valuable. So going to bring us on to Najee Harris, who I do have in the same tier here as Jaylen Warren. There's upside. Very similar years last year between the two of them, and like I said, although I do think that Najee Harris enters the year as the starting running back, and I'll be a little bit surprised if Jaylen Warren supersedes him. At the same time, Jaylen Warren might just be the better. It might be something where halfway, 2/3 of the way through the season, whatever the case, they just have no option but to say, Jaylen Warren, you are now the starter on this roster over Najee Harris. I could see that. So that's some of my concerns for Najee. The upside is that this offense should be leaning on the run, should have an emphasis on the run with Arthur Smith there in addition to that. So the opportunities should definitely be there to have a good floor. I don't know about the ceiling because of touchdowns and some sort of shared workload with Jalen Warren. Nick Chubb up next here, and Nick Chubb is going to be in the there's upside tier, and this just really comes down to he'll be in one of the videos later this week, but of course that injury, I'm assuming it's not going to be until halfway through the season that he comes back. But when he comes back, I mean, he's Nick Chubb. There's upside, okay? There's always upside. There's always money in the banana stand with Nick Chubb.
No, we don't have the money, Pop.
There's money in the banana stand.
That's going to bring us on to Jalen Wright, who we're going to put, he is the other guy. He's more so an impact on Devon Achan's ranking than I have faith in him being easily usable, but really, really big fan of him. Rookie running back, got drafted this season, and I think he's an excellent fit for this offensive system, and I do think that he's going to get some work. And in the event of an injury, you'll really want him on that offense. That's going to bring us on to Rachaad White, who I have no questions really about. Last year, came through. They didn't bring in any real competition at running back position, so I'm expecting something from last year. I guess there is one question surrounding Rachaad White, and that is that this is going to be a new offensive system. Will he continue to get anywhere near the amount of receiving work that he did last year? But assuming that was, Baker Mayfield thing and just taking advantage of what he's best at, Rachaad White, which is receiving the ball and then going from there compared to running between the tackles, he has a lot of upside yet again because of all that receiving work that we expect he'll get enough of again this year. Raheem Mostert is going to be the first guy here to be in the multiple questions tier. We got Devon Achan. We have Jalen Wright, rookie drafted there. The workload. Is there going to be enough of a workload here for Raheem Mostert, who is now going to be the veteran, the oldest of that group? I don't know. There's enough questions that I'm just like a little bit concerned about it. But hey, we're still drafting him higher than we drafted him last year, right? Ray Davis is up next. He is the other guy. Really, really like him a lot. Going to be Buffalo backing up. Actually going to be really the change of pace type of back for James Cook. I do think I have enough faith of him that if James Cook were to go down, that he would be the next man up as well as just being the change of pace back while James Cook is available. So he's a pretty darn good receiving back as well, too, so he could really fill in that James Cook role. But he's also a bigger bruising back on top of that. So really cool profile that I think fits a need there as well as fitting the backup role for James Cook. So he's a valuable asset to have. Ramondre Stevenson up next. He's going to be in there's upside tier here. As you can see, plenty of concern, but there's still upside. Going to be the starting running back on an NFL roster. So I'm not letting him fall too far in these drafts. We'll talk more about him on Wednesday or Friday. That's going to bring us on to Rico Dowdle, who's obviously going to be the other guy. I mean, I don't know. He might be the starter there ahead of Zeke. Maybe Zeke's probably not going to be the backup, but maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But the moment that Zeke were to go down, Rico Dowdle would have, I assume, a pretty nice role there on a decent offense, right? So bring us to Roschon Johnson, the other guy. And he's deep down. I really, really like the skill set of Roschon Johnson, and he looked pretty good when he got his opportunity last year, which was for like a game. So tough to say. If there's, he's somebody I am willing to possibly leave on the bench at the end of the day, but there's still some upside there in the event of injuries and whatnot. It's going to bring us on to ex-Packer, new Minnesota Viking, Aaron Jones, and he's going to be in the question or two tier. I'm not so sold that this Minnesota offense is just going to be great or anything like that. Aaron Jones has suffered more and more from some injuries over the past couple of years that have held him out for more and more time. Last year being a fairly significant amount of time. He's a fantastic running back. He'll help Minnesota's offense when he's on the field, hopefully, all year long. But I'm not like insanely high on Aaron Jones or anything with Minnesota. The touchdowns, I think, will be a little bit less so for him. To bring us on to Alvin Kamara, a similar-ish situation to Aaron Jones, but I do think there's even more of a threat with Kendre Miller right behind him. And probably, I don't know if it's a worse or better offense. We'll see, I guess, as the year goes along. But decent chance that it's not a better offense than Minnesota's offense. That's going to bring us on to Antonio Gibson, who is now with the New England Patriots, the other guy there backing up from Andre Stevenson. I could definitely see them finding a role for him and him being fantasy viable. And more likely, I could definitely see him being a risky play in an emergency situation, but also if Ramondre Stevenson goes down, like a very, very high-end replacement kind of guy. Audric Estime is someone who I'm keeping my eyes on. I'm willing to take a risk on late in the draft if I'm just taking a pot shot at a running back. I would not be shocked if he is the starting running back over Javonte Williams at any point in the season. Really, I did not love Audric Estime in the draft, but he brings an element that Javonte Williams doesn't, which is just, he should at least bring this element, which is just getting you, those 3 to 4 yards, getting you the yards that are blocked. Even if you don't get a whole lot more, he might be able to get a whole lot more. But Javonte Williams is more boom or bust as a running back. He, kicks it out wide pretty much every time. Doesn't really like to run between the tackles too much. Just less consistently reliable. And I think that this offense is going to want to take the yards that they can get every single down and not be put into 3rd and longs, 2nd and 2 long types of situations. I think they want to be a very consistently moving the ball forward, a chunk at a time, West Coast style of offense. And Audric Estime might give them the better chance at that. So bring us on to Jerome Ford, who's going to have half of the season, I believe, as the starter at least. So there is even some more upside to Jerome Ford than that. But, I mean, he did perform quite well last year as the starter for Cleveland. He's going to start off with that same role, once again, I believe at least for half of the year. So he's a good guy to have on your roster at a certain point in the draft. That's going to bring us on to Austin Eckler, who I do have multiple questions about, but I'm also quite optimistic about, and we'll talk more about that. He's with Washington now. I like the situation better than last year's situation for him. We'll just put it that way. So we'll see him later on this week in the sleeper video. That's going to bring us on to Bijan Robinson, who's clearly S tier. Fantastic running back. Last year, I warned you against how highly he was going. This year, I'm all on a board here. I was correct on my assessment last year of how they would utilize him, that they would not forget about their guy in Tyler Algier, and he would get too much workload, and the fact that this offense wouldn't give enough touchdown opportunities for him to be quite, worthwhile of how highly he was getting drafted last season. But this season, like I said, I'm all aboard the Bijan Robinson train. Let's go, baby. He's going to get plenty of work. They're going to use him like he should get utilized. That's to bring us on to Blake Corum, who, I talked a little bit about him when I talked about Kyren Williams there. The opportunity, if he gets it, should be pretty good for him, as long as that offensive line can block. My big concern for him was his ability to create more after the offensive line, but I do think that concern got alleviated a little bit by looking a little further back into his rushing history than just last year's running work. But still, he was hampered by his injury. Whatever the case, he's worth having on the back end of your roster as a backup to Kyren Williams, or in the event that Kyren Williams were to go down. As I bring us on to Breece Hall, S tier, very, very easy to understand why, right? With Aaron Rodgers coming back, probably, I don't know, I assume Aaron Rodgers coming back fine. Then this offense is a different thing, and Breece Hall should be able to feast, and they should have incentive in order to keep some of the pressure off of Aaron Jones to run that ball a little bit more, Aaron Rodgers, to run that ball just a little bit more than maybe Aaron would like to. But Aaron's also going to have control of that, so who knows. Regardless, Breece Hall should be highly efficient and get some good receiving work too. We've seen Aaron Jones do plenty well under Aaron Rodgers' control in that offense, and Breece Hall is more talented than Aaron Jones. Brian Robinson Jr. is a very good running back. I think he'll have a nice floor no real receiving work, maybe more valuable in a non-PPR type of format, standard format. But he's, to me, just the other guy fantasy-wise compared to Austin Eckler. Still, no, in the event that Austin Eckler gets injured or that offense starts to click as the season goes along, which it could, Brian Robinson could prove to be valuable. So bring us on to Chase Brown, and once again, so I have a lot of questions. I'm once again going to be, I got 2 asterisks there, okay? Last year I was very high on Chase Brown, if you're not familiar, and I said I would stand my ground no matter what at this point last year. I did not. I read the tea leaves. I understood that what I expected to happen was not happening, and Chase Brown I did not really have on my, very low on my draft board by the time that it came to draft day. So once again here, yes, I might end up moving Chase Brown down, not as low as last year, but down further. But they brought in Zach Moss. I'm not overly concerned about that. Look, Chase Brown gets a decent amount of work. If he gets an Austin Eckler type of role, something like that, I think he could be highly valuable in fantasy football. So we'll see more about him later on this week. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, do we need to say it? It's S tier. He's the best running back. He's the RB1. Let's bring us on to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, still hanging on here now. He's just like the number 2 running back. They do not have Jerick McKinnon anymore, so he could get a little bit more workload even without injury, but that's more so in case of an Isaiah Pacheco injury. He's clearly the next guy, so in that event, he should have some value. That's going to bring us on to Joe Mixon, touchdown reliant, question mark. Going to be the starter there with, for the second year, this offense that we're expecting a lot of great things from in Houston. But, there's still just some little question marks around it. He just ended up in this tier, I don't know, touchdown reliant, whatever. Touchdown should be fine. I feel okay about Joe Mixon, okay? This is just where he ends up in the rankings in this tiered area. Jonathan Taylor is still S tier as well in my mind. Very, very, very talented running back, and I think that offense is going to be very good, and I think he has a very, very high chance of having a very good year as well. That's going to bring us on to Jonathan Brooks. I have multiple questions about, but I do think that there is a chance, starting running back of one of 32 teams in the NFL. Okay? There's a good chance here for Jonathan Brooks, and I really, really liked him. The question marks come into his health. Is it going to take him several weeks into the season to be himself? Is he going to be himself at all this season? And he's on that Carolina offense. Do we really think that that's going to be a better offense? It should be better, right? It should be better. But still, the amount of touchdown opportunities and everything might not be that great for him. So might just be a decent high floor, low ceiling kind of guy, which is a little bit different. That's the last time we saw that was probably these touchdown reliant guys, but then I have them at the top end of maybe a couple other guys who, whatever the case. I feel comfortable about drafting Jonathan Brooks at a certain point in the draft. And Josh Jacobs is going to be a question or two. I spoke about Marshawn Lloyd. I do think that he's going to get some work. Injuries, things with Josh Jacobs could always be a little bit of a concern each and every year. He always looks like he's hobbled, and as you get older, you recover from these types of things less, and as those types of things build up, they can become more major down the road. So I always just have a little bit of that concern in the back of my head with Josh Jacobs, but regardless, pretty high up on him as a draft option for the Green Bay Packers running back this season. That's going to be it for the running back video. Thank you very, very much for tuning on in. Now let's just hop in and look at, but just a couple of channel membership things here. First of all, as I teased, giveaway. If you become a channel member, 99 cents, you will get a password to my Discord channel. On the Discord channel, there are a couple of very clearly labeled channels, one of them being something about Fantasy Football League for the 2024 fantasy season. If you have interest and you become a member, just go right in there and let me know that you are interested. We get enough people, we make a league. We don't get enough people, we'll try to figure something out, something that we can do together to make it entertaining and, give you worthy of your expectations by putting your name down for that list. Then we've got access to my equalized value consistency chart rankings. Equalized value, very much like average fantasy points per week, however, better. It's a better measure of how often these guys are helping you to win each and every week because it takes consistency into account. It doesn't get fully inflated by one 50-point fantasy point week, whereas they got 50 points and then they got like 8 points and 7 points compared to a guy who got like 20 points 3 weeks in a row. Which one of them helped you more weeks? I would say the guy who got the 20 points. That's enough to help you win and it not be their fault if you lost. So that's how EV works. You can see all of the finalized equalized value charts from last year. You have access to those. And in season, I also keep up with the next EV chart. And it comes a week, 6, 7. If you're trying to make a trade, that could be a good resource for you to check in helping with determining who to trade or who to target. And then for non-PPR slash standard league format rankings and full PPR format rankings, if you want those rankings, you're going to have to let me know as a member. Just go into, I have 2 channels, one of them for standard format, non-PPR, one of them for full PPR. You go in there, let me know. All it takes is one person, and I'll get those rankings out there for you. So there we go. Thank you very, very much for tuning on in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That's it.